My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 42 years old, and for a long time I believed it was just life rushing past me. Monday came, then Tuesday, and suddenly it was Friday again. A new week would start before the previous one had even ended properly. Between meetings, reports, phone calls, grocery runs, bills to pay, and keeping the house in order, I had completely forgotten about myself. Actually, I had forgotten myself a long time ago. I just didn't realize it until my body started reminding me in the worst way. I work in marketing for a tech company in Seattle, and I've always been known as the woman who handles everything. I arrived early, stayed late, helped the team, went the extra mile. Claire is unstoppable, people would say. And I'd smile. Deep down, I wanted to cry. But I smiled, because that's what everyone expected from me. The thing is, the body has limits, and when it starts to speak, you have to listen, even if it takes you a while. It started with a persistent headache. I thought it was the coffee. I cut it out. Then I blamed the screens. I adjusted the blue light, bought filtered glasses, avoided my phone at night. Nothing helped. The pain lingered like a quiet reminder. But like all things quiet, it slowly grew, took up more space. Then came the forgetfulness. Names, simple tasks, passwords I'd used for years. I laughed it off at first, blaming it on age. Then came the exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix, not even 12 hours on a weekend. It was a gray Tuesday when something different happened. I was in the car, on my way to a meeting, when my right fingers started tingling. Then it felt like my whole arm had shut off. I pulled over, shaking, heart pounding. I thought I was having a stroke. I barely managed to call the ER. But the tests showed nothing serious. An anxiety attack, the doctor said. And I thought, but I'm not anxious. I'm just tired. That day changed everything. The episodes became frequent. My muscles stiffened. My legs wouldn't move the way they used to. I felt dizzy, nauseous, a constant urge to lie down and never get back up. I visited every kind of specialist, cardiologist, neurologist, endocrinologist, test after test. Everything came back normal, but I didn't feel normal. And somehow that was even scarier than a diagnosis. My performance at work tanked. I started hearing whispers. No one said anything to my face, but I saw the looks. Claire's not the same, they whispered. Even my boss called me in. Are you okay? Maybe you should take a few days off? I declined. I always did. Admitting I wasn't okay felt like admitting weakness, and I had never learned how to be weak. That month I cried more than I ever had in my life, quietly, in the office bathroom, in my car, in the shower. I felt a sadness I couldn't name, a hollowness that not even my daughter's hugs could fill. I looked at them and felt guilty for not being able to smile, for not being the cheerful mom I used to be, for not having energy to help with homework. It was my oldest daughter, Emily, 12 years old, who gave me the first real wake-up call. Mommy, are you sick? You seem so sad, even when you smile. That broke me. That same night, I sat at the edge of my bed and cried like a child. And for the first time in a long time, I admitted it. I wasn't okay. This wasn't just exhaustion. This wasn't just work. It was something deeper. The next morning, I called a psychologist a friend had recommended months earlier. Her name was Dr. Lisa Martin, and I still remember her calm voice on the phone. You've taken the first step. That's the most important thing. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I'd have to learn how to slow down, look inward, and allow myself to feel. But the road ahead was long, and anything but easy. If this story is touching you in any way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This simple gesture means a lot to our work and encourages us to keep sharing real, deep, and human stories. Stories that offer comfort, spark reflection, and remind us that no one is truly alone. Thank you so much for being here. Your presence matters. Always. The first session with Dr. Lisa Martin was over a video call. I was too ashamed to go to her office in person. I felt like I didn't belong in a place like that. Therapy was for people who had real problems, I told myself. I had a good job, a house, 2 beautiful daughters. I wasn't struggling financially. How could I be depressed? But Dr. Martin's eyes were kind. She didn't rush me. She didn't make me feel judged. She just listened. And in that silence, I found myself pouring everything out, about the pressure to be perfect, about the guilt, the fatigue, the fear that something inside me was breaking and I didn't know how to fix it. I sobbed during that call, and by the night, and I felt like I had exhaled after holding my breath for years. Over the next weeks, therapy became my anchor. It was the only place where I could be honest without pretending I had it all together. I began to understand things I had never stopped to think about before. How I had built my identity around being useful, productive, capable. How I had ignored every sign my body gave me because I didn't think I had the right to rest. Rest was weakness, and weakness wasn't allowed. Dr. Martin helped me name something I had been afraid to admit. I was burned out. Severely. My mind wasn't just tired. My spirit was. I wasn't just stressed. I was disconnected from myself. I had been surviving for so long. I forgot what it felt like to truly live. One evening, I sat in the backyard while my daughters played with the garden hose, screaming with laughter as they soaked each other under the summer sun. I remember just watching them, not saying a word. For the first time in what felt like forever, I noticed the way the sunlight turned Emily's hair golden. The way Lily, my youngest, had a laugh that bubbled up from her belly. And something stirred in me. It was small, but it was real. A flicker. A spark. I think it was joy. That's when I started making a list. Every night before bed, I wrote down 3 things that made me smile during the day. It wasn't always easy. Some days I had to dig deep. The scent of fresh laundry, or the cat curled up at my feet. But slowly, those small things started to carry weight. I began to look for them, to notice them, to expect them. I started choosing to see the good, even when the fog was still thick. With Dr. Martin's help, I also learned to set boundaries at work. I talked to my boss honestly, probably the most vulnerable conversation I had ever had in a professional setting. I explained that I needed time to heal, that I had ignored my mental health for too long, and that I wasn't okay pretending anymore. To my surprise, she was understanding. She allowed me to adjust my hours, take real breaks, and even connected me with the company's mental health resources. It was like the universe was finally giving me permission to pause. My daughters became my little support team. Emily started leaving sticky notes on my mirror. "You're the best mom," or "Don't forget to smile." Lily would climb into bed with me on hard days, wrapping her arms around me and whispering, "I love you, Mommy." I realized then how much children feel, even when we try to hide our pain, and I promised myself that I wouldn't hide anymore. Of course, not every day was good. There were setbacks. I still had mornings when I didn't want to get out of bed. There were days when the world felt too loud, too demanding. But I stopped expecting perfection. I started allowing myself to be human, to cry, to cancel plans, to say no. And somewhere in the middle of all that softness, all that surrender, I started to heal. Healing didn't look like I expected. I used to imagine it as a straight line, a clear path where I'd feel a little better each day until everything returned to normal. But it wasn't like that at all. It came in waves. Some days I felt light enough to dance in the kitchen while cooking dinner. Other days, I found myself staring at the wall, unable to remember what I had just been doing. But slowly, I realized something. Healing wasn't about going back to who I was before. It was about becoming someone new, someone softer, wiser, and more aware. I started walking in the mornings, just 10 minutes at first. My legs were stiff and my chest felt heavy, but the quiet was comforting. The world was still sleepy, and so was I. The sidewalks were wet with dew, and I could hear birds I had never noticed before. I walked without my phone, without music, just me and my breath. Those walks became sacred. They were my way of telling myself, "You deserve this time. You are allowed to exist without being useful." I also reconnected with things I used to love. I began painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I wasn't good at it anymore, but that wasn't the point. The brush in my hand felt like a lifeline. I painted flowers, houses, skies. Sometimes I just mixed colors on the canvas for no reason. It was messy, joyful, imperfect, and it reminded me that life could be all of those things too. Around that time, I joined a support group for women going through similar experiences. We met every Thursday night, online at first, and later in person. It was strange at first, hearing other women speak words that mirrored my own. I thought it was just stress. I felt guilty for being tired. I couldn't recognize myself anymore. But there was comfort in knowing I wasn't alone. We laughed, we cried, we shared, and slowly, the shame I had carried began to loosen its grip. One evening after group, I came home to find Emily waiting for me in the living room. She had made chamomile tea and set out cookies on a napkin. "I thought you might want a snack," she said. I sat next to her and took the warm mug in my hands. She looked at me and smiled. "You seem happier lately, Mom." And I realized she was right. I wasn't fully myself yet, but I was climbing out of the darkness, one small step at a time. The biggest change came when I stopped asking, "When will I be back to normal?" and started asking, "What do I need today?" That shift in mindset changed everything. I no longer measured my worth by my productivity. I started saying things like, "I'm proud of myself for resting," and "Today I chose peace." And even though my world hadn't changed drastically on the outside, same job, same house, same routines, inside, I was slowly building a new home for myself, one where I could be tired and still be enough, one where I didn't have to wear a mask to be loved. I remember one night, I stood on the back porch while it rained. I didn't rush inside. I just stood there, barefoot, letting the drops fall on my skin. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet thank you. Not for the rain, but for the fact that I could feel it. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't numb. There's a strange kind of beauty in breaking down, in being forced to stop. It strips you of all the things you thought defined you. And when you finally start putting yourself back together, you realize you can choose what to keep and what to leave behind. I left behind the perfectionism, the guilt, the impossible standards, and I started collecting new things: gentleness, presence, gratitude. Some people around me didn't understand. "But you're doing better now, right?" they asked, as if healing had a finish line. But I stopped trying to explain. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. My life wasn't a performance. It was a journey. And I was learning how to walk it, one intentional, sacred step at a time. There came a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when I realized I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. It wasn't a grand event. It wasn't fireworks or a perfect day. It was a Tuesday morning. I was making breakfast, humming a song I hadn't thought of in years, when I noticed that my hands weren't trembling, my shoulders weren't tense, my chest wasn't heavy. I was just there, present, breathing. And that, for me, was everything. That realization came with another one. I wanted to help others feel this too. not because I had all the answers, but because I knew how it felt to walk through the fog alone. I began writing about my journey, just little notes at first, in a journal. Then I started a blog. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but they did. Messages came in from strangers. I thought I was the only one. You put into words what I couldn't. Thank you for making me feel less alone. Those words felt like threads weaving something back together in me. Connection, purpose, meaning. I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't a doctor. I was just a woman who had learned to listen to her body and heart after years of ignoring both. And that, somehow, made me more human than I had ever felt before. My daughters began to notice more than just my smile. They noticed how I no longer snapped at them when I was overwhelmed. How I took breaks, real ones, not scrolling through my phone breaks, but lying on the floor, listening to music kind of breaks. They saw me choose rest without guilt. They watched me cry openly and talk about it without shame. And slowly, they began to mirror those things too. Emily started journaling. Lily started saying things like, "I need a minute," when she felt overstimulated. It was beautiful, watching them learn emotional language I had never known at their age. At work, things shifted. I stopped trying to be the best at everything. I started being honest in meetings when I didn't have the answer. I allowed silence to be part of my leadership. And strangely, people respected me more for it. Vulnerability, I realized, wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing I had ever practiced. Dr. Martin eventually told me something I'll never forget. "Claire," she said, "you didn't break. You bent. And in bending, you found your roots." That image stuck with me. I had spent so much of my life trying to stand tall, unshaken, perfectly composed. But maybe the strength wasn't in standing straight. It was in learning how to bend and not snap. In learning how to bow gently to life, to emotions, to seasons of change. One weekend, we took a trip to the ocean. Just me and the girls. It had been years since I'd felt brave enough to leave town without the stress of work following me. I remember sitting on the sand, watching the tide come in, and feeling completely grounded. The sea breeze, the sound of the waves, the laughter of my daughters running barefoot along the shore. It all felt like a prayer. And I whispered one silently, "Thank you for this second chance." That night, in our small rented cottage by the beach, I watched the girls sleep and allowed myself to dream again. I no longer dreamed of climbing higher or earning more. I dreamed of slow mornings, deep conversations, messy art projects, spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen. I dreamed of life, lived fully, with all its imperfections. And I knew, without doubt, that I was never going back to the woman I was before. She had served her purpose. She had done her best. But now, I was someone new, someone softer, someone stronger. It's been almost 2 years since the day my body gave out in that parked car. 2 years since my fingers went numb and my world stopped spinning long enough for me to see the truth. And now, looking back, I don't feel regret. I feel gratitude, because sometimes it takes falling apart to finally come home to yourself. The woman I was back then, always rushing, always pleasing, always pretending, deserved compassion, not judgment. She thought strength meant never stopping. She believed her value depended on what she could produce. But now I know better. Now I know that real strength is the courage to rest, to ask for help, to say, "I'm not okay," and trust that those words don't make you less. They make you human. I still go to therapy, not because I'm broken, but because I'm committed to staying whole. Therapy became my mirror, my map, and sometimes my anchor. It taught me how to breathe through the chaos, how to listen to the wisdom of my own body, and how to let go of the weight I was never meant to carry. These days, my life is simpler, but fuller. I wake up without dread. I drink my coffee slowly. I walk barefoot in the grass. I say no when I need to and yes when I want to. I spend real time with my daughters, not just time squeezed between deadlines. We cook meals together, paint our nails on lazy Sundays, and have movie nights with too much popcorn. Those little things, those once invisible moments, have become the core of my joy. And most importantly, I've learned to speak to myself with kindness. When the old thoughts creep in, you should be doing more, you're falling behind, you're not enough. I pause, I breathe, and I gently remind myself, you're doing just fine. You're allowed to be exactly as you are. Sometimes I still get tired. Sometimes the fog returns, not as thick, but enough to make me pause. And when it does, I no longer panic. I no longer fight it. I sit with it, like an old friend who came to remind me to slow down again. And in that pause, I remember everything I've learned. That life isn't a race, and healing isn't linear, and I don't need to earn my rest. One day, Emily asked me if I remembered the time she left sticky notes on my mirror to cheer me up. I told her I did. She smiled and said, "You don't need them anymore, Mom." I smiled back and said, "Maybe not. But I think I'll leave one for you today." That evening I wrote on a small pink note, "You are brave. You are loved. You are more than enough." I left it on her pillow, and when I saw her face light up, I felt something swell in my chest. Not the ache of anxiety, but the warmth of peace. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I know that whatever comes, I'll face it from a place of wholeness, not perfection, but presence. I know now how to honor the signals my body sends. I know how to rest. I know how to come back to myself. And if you're reading this and feeling like I once did, tired, numb, invisible, I want you to know this. You are not alone. It's not just stress. It's not just a phase. Your feelings are real. Your pain is valid. And there is a way through it. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to feel joy again. And you will. You are not broken. You're just bending. And in that bend, there is space to grow.